talks now.
Of course, yeah. Well, welcome back, everyone. Really excited for the next few talks. So we have getting involved in student politics with the lovely James Curry, who is the Vice President for Equality and Citizenship in the Union of Students in Ireland. James will obviously tell you a bit about that and himself, but we're going to be learning about how James got involved, how to get involved yourself, and how it can help shape the future of the student experience. Um, then we're going to meet Adam Harris and Ken Kilbride, who are the CEO, both of them are the CEOs of As I Am and Ahead, or no, I work for Ahead, ADHD Ireland, uh, respectively. I think I said that right. Adam Harris works for As I Am and Ken Kilbride works for ADHD Ireland. Then we'll be meeting the lovely Delia Ferry, who will be giving us an overview of European disability law. But yeah, James, I'll let you take it away from here and best of luck. I'm really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Quiva. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. And yeah, I suppose without further ado, I'm going to go straight into it. So, just I suppose a little bit about me. If, oh no, now it's not working. Of course, this is when we did the tech check. It's not.
Oh, it's okay, don't worry. You have time. There we go.
Let's try again.
Oh,
No, right, 1 second.
no worries. What we could do is I can share my screen if all else fails.
Yeah, I'll try this one more time, and if it doesn't, we'll do that. You'd think after 2 years online, I'd be able to figure this out.
Honestly,
Like at all.
Lisa, that I've been on Zoom for the past few days and I haven't learned anything.
Oh no, same as that. Like, oh no, it all depends whether it wants to behave on the day or not. Like, it's just temperamental.
It really is. Right, we got it working now. So, sorry again. So, welcome everyone. So my talk is going to be about getting involved in student politics. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own journey of how I got to where I am today, and yeah, kind of just get you, I suppose, motivated and involved in student politics. So, a little bit about who I am for those of you who don't know who I am. My name is James Curry. I'm the USI Vice President for Equality and Citizenship. My pronouns are he, him. I am severely dyslexic, so if there's any spelling or grammar mistakes in this at all, I do apologize. And I definitely, I'm undiagnosed ADHD. That is something that I'm trying to get assessed at the minute, but that is a lot of money that I do not have. But it runs in my family, so I know for a fact that I definitely have it. Fun little facts about me. If you ever get to meet me, I'll always have a can of Monster with me. If I don't have a can of Monster, something's clearly wrong. So yeah. So I suppose just to kind of go straight into it, about my own journey, I started college in 2018 in what was IT Tala, which is now TU Dublin. My undergrad was in sports science and health, so that was for 4 years. And I remember kind of quickly, like when I got into college, I have two older brothers, and they were always telling me that, once you get into college, just get involved with everything. It's a fresh start. You're going to meet so many new people, and there's going to be so many opportunities to get involved with things. You might as well just go for it. So that's exactly what I did. On the first day, Students' Union gave us our orientation, and they told us loads of different things. They told us about an upcoming protest that was happening that was organised by USI at the time, which was the Raise the Roof campaign, for some of you who might remember that. That was originally done by USI, and now it's kind of taken off itself. So that was my first ever protest, and I was only a week in first year, so I kind of literally went straight in. And yeah, I got heavily involved in societies. I didn't really include everything about societies because there was so much I did. I created Nerd Society in Tala. Then I was a part of Airsoft, drama, radio, and LGBT. Like I was in loads of things. I went for BICS, which is Board of Irish College Societies Awards. I came home with Best Fresher for that year in 2019. And that kind of encouraged me, from just my dedication to societies, encouraged me to run part-time in the Students' Union as the part-time officer for societies, which was in 2019 and 2019 and 2020. So when I was kind of a part-time officer, it was nice, it was flexible, and it wasn't, I suppose, as hard work compared to a full-time role as sabbatical. And so it kind of gave me a lot of flexibility to work on loads of different things. When I was a part-time officer, I would have been kind of contacting societies and making sure that they were all set up and made sure everything was done perfectly for them. In terms of events and everything, I made sure that things were accessible, like in terms of if it was in a bar, is it wheelchair accessible? Is there wheelchair accessible toilets? Is there going to be a lot of lights or loud sounds? Is there going to be earplugs and stuff like that? So I kind of did some small checks like that. It was kind of interesting, I suppose. You can kind of look at there. I kind of went backwards in a way of how people usually get involved. So I went from a part-time officer to a school rep. This would have been during COVID. So this one was a little bit more difficult for me to do because everyone wasn't really engaged, unfortunately. But I would have met with program boards and kind of just relayed a lot of information that class reps would have given to me, and basically everyone hated COVID. So it was a very tough time. I didn't really get to do as much as I really wanted to do in that position. And then in my final year, in 21-22, I became class rep for my course. So yeah, it's a bit backwards, but I mean, I was doing everything kind of similar enough. I was representing my class on loads of different issues. Now, luckily, we were very lucky, and we had some really good lecturers who took on feedback anytime we had any issues, particularly with accessibility to websites and everything. We were able to kind of find some middle ground and make things work out. So ultimately, that made me run for the union full time. So I became the deputy president for TALA in TU Dublin Students' Union last year, so 22-23. That's actually the last year that title exists, because we did a brand new constitution for TU Dublin SU. So my position was actually the last time it ever existed. So I suppose I'm a little bit honoured in that sense. But during that time, I would have, I suppose I was in a very unique position that two of my co-workers resigned, unfortunately. So I took up 2 extra remits of welfare and equality and education. So I basically did everything in TALA, but it was really good. It gave me a lot of insight into loads of different issues, particularly around disability services. I would have talked a lot with the disability services in college, and kind of if students came to me with issues and saying they weren't actually getting any help of such, I was either kind of able to relay that information onto them, and if there was any specific or like special requests, we were able to kind of talk it out and kind of go case by case basis. And then that ultimately made me want to run for the national union, because I always wanted to get involved, like I said, from the very beginning. And yeah, I figured that I knew I was only going to stay in the union full time for about 2 years. So this is my last year, unfortunately. And so I said, why not go for the national level? So here I am now at USI, and my whole remit around equality and citizenship is probably one of the biggest remits in USI policy file, but it basically encompasses around LGBT matters, race, international students, disabilities, sustainability, voter registration. The list kind of goes on. I'm probably forgetting about 10 things as I'm saying it. So yeah, and so that's kind of just a little bit about my own journey. I suppose a lot of people kind of come up to me realizing kind of the situations of me being like severely dyslexic, or particularly with the ADHD, like not being able to concentrate and stuff. A lot of people have kind of asked me, being like, how did you really kind of dive into this stuff? And I just said I really put my head down. And I suppose the great thing that we'll kind of go into it a little bit later on in the slides is that the union is very open to everyone. There's student unions in both further education and higher education. So if you ever want to get involved with them, they will find ways to make sure that you can make everything and get involved as much as you possibly can. So I suppose we're going to cut it down to basics. So what are student unions? So student unions are a democratic structure that represent the student voice. So it's usually made up of students. Now in further education colleges, it's students who are elected based on what school you're in. I'll kind of go into that in a minute. Whereas in further education, in higher education, it's a 1-year sabbatical position. So you can either do it at the end of your studies, or you can take a year out and take the year in the students' union. But basically your job is to represent the student voice. So In most student unions, you'd usually have a president, and then you'd usually have a vice president for welfare and equality, and then a vice president for education. That's kind of just a very general structure. Some unions might have less, some unions might have more. It really depends on kind of what the structure is. But ultimately, yeah, it's about representing the student voice on all those kind of matters, and also it's a signposting service. So as I was saying earlier, I would have had a lot of students come into me last year about certain caseworks, and if I wasn't necessarily able to help them in the union's capacity, I was able to assign them to the relevant services that would be able to help them, such as the disability services or anything else as such. But yeah, that's kind of just a very rough outline of what student union is. No one can ever fully define what a student union is. Anyone who's ever been in a sabbatical position knows how hard it is to describe what your job is unless you're actually in it. But yeah, that's kind of just a very general overview. So kind of just give you some background on what is USI. So USI is the Union of Students in Ireland. We are the national students union in Ireland. So we represent over 374,000 students across the island of Ireland. That includes both north and south of the border. And student unions that are classed or that are affiliated under USI are classed as member organizations. So I actually can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I believe we have, I think about, it's more than 20 member organizations. Someone from the Cushton might be able to pop in here from the watch parties and maybe help me with that number. But so we're quite a big organization. Is primarily higher education student unions that are affiliated, but in the past we have had further education as well being involved with USI. So what do we do? So we lobby the government based on mandates that come from our national councils and our Congress event, or COGAL. Some of the policy areas that we campaign on behalf of students are the likes of academic affairs or education. Everyone kind of changes between those two titles. Welfare, equality and citizenship, postgraduates, and the Irish language. And then we would have a president on top of that, and then regional officers based in Dublin, the South, and the Border, Midlands, and Western region. And then we would have the NUS USI president, which is based up in the North. And that is an entirely different system that I'm not going to cover in this talk because that's a talk of its own. But yeah, just kind of give you an idea of the structure. So the great thing about USI is that we get to do loads of cool campaigns and events. In my area particularly, we get to run a lot of events to empower and liberate students. So just kind of give you examples of events. So Pink Training, that was an event I coordinated back in November. It took me about 3 months to plan. It was a very fun time to do and also a very stressful time, but it definitely paid off. So I'm very honored that I got to run Europe's largest LGBTQ plus student training event. We also have our Empower event, which we also ran back in November, and we're going to be doing again actually next week in Belfast. And that's trying to encourage students from ethnic diverse backgrounds to run for leadership positions. And we've also ran Women in Lead, which encourages women to run for leadership positions as well. And kind of just on the right on that infographic there, just kind of active campaigns that USI is constantly doing. So we're looking at the cost of college. So for some of you who might not know, Ireland is the most expensive in Europe for higher education studies. 3 grand is ridiculous amounts of money. I don't know why the government thinks anyone can afford that. So that is something that USI is actively campaigning on. We're also making sure that students have quality assurance when it comes to their degree and skills gained during their course of study. So we're making sure that everyone, when they're going through the education system, that they are getting the right services and the right quality of their studies. And then our third thing is student welfare. So making sure that everyone is looking after their mental, physical, and sexual health throughout their entire time in college. We do massive campaigns. I'm sure some of you might have seen some campaigns such as SHAG, which is the big sexual health awareness week. Usually see people throw around condoms and lube. It's a lot of fun. It sounds silly if you've never heard of it, but it's great fun. So that's just kind of a very brief and rough outline of what USI does. There's so much more that I could dive into, but like I said, just kind of for the brevity of staying on topic, just kind of give you an outline. So why should you get involved with student politics? I suppose that's kind of a big question a lot of people ask, and suppose why people ask me as well. Lots of fun events and campaigns, like simple as you get to go to a protest. Like I said, first week in college as a first year, fresh out of the womb at 18, basically, in like absolutely no idea where I was going, didn't know anyone, didn't have any friends who followed me from secondary school. And I was like, why not just go for it? And I never regretted it since. You get to meet so many amazing people. You get to talk about certain things that, you know, someone else might relate to in certain senses. So I would have talked about a lot of people about being queer, about being dyslexic, and loads of different things. So you'll definitely get to, I suppose, you get to come into this unique community of people who are, I suppose, activists. Well, we are activists in this sense, but you get to talk about things that are really close to your heart, and I suppose it's a very special thing that you can't really describe, but it's only something you really feel. I suppose the benefit to it as well is it looks great on a CV. Getting to say that you helped organize a big massive campaign, or you organize a big massive event, it looks great on CVs. Usually a lot of student union officers, regardless if it's part-time or full-time, if they put it on their CV that they've done so much of this activism work or work on campaigns and events, excuse me, a lot of people do question it, and they're like, oh my God, that's interesting. Like, can you please elaborate on it? And it gives you a chance to kind of really dive into the unique environment that you are in. And of course, I suppose the big thing about it is you get to help lobby for positive change to the student experience, both on a local and national level. So of course, this kind of depends on where you plan to take it. So if you were, suppose, more focusing on local services, so let me just say, for example, wheelchair accessible toilets on campus. That could be something that you could bring to your local students union, say that there's not enough of them, or the wheelchair accessible toilet is only available upstairs and that there's no lift access. Like simple stuff like that. And that could definitely be stuff that can be dealt with locally. On a national level, you could bring that to USI, and there's other ways that you can bring about it as well. I'm trying to think of an example of like a national thing. Oh, actually, there was a mandate I could think of. So back in, I think, 21 or 22, USI was mandated from our COGOL event to support the jam cards. So jam cards, for those who might not know, is cards, I don't have one on me, unfortunately, but they're called just a minute cards. So it's usually for people who are neurodivergent or might be on the spectrum or anything as such. And it's basically just to tell the person that you just need an extra minute to process what you need to do. There's a lot of local businesses and colleges that are trying to support this initiative. So we have a mandate that's basically asking us to support this initiative and make sure that it's rolled out in institutions across the island. So those are kind of just examples of how you can look at a local level and also look at a national level as well. So knowing where to go in terms of supports, like I said, students' unions are able to support you. So this is kind of where the breakdown I was talking about a little bit. So in further education, student unions are under your student support, student services, and are usually made up of elected students from each department. As far as I know, for further education, that is only for the year. So from first semester to second semester, and then it turns back over for each year. And it's the same thing for higher education. Student unions are separated from the college and act as an autonomous organization, but it's the same process that you were only in there for a year. You can rerun for the positions. In some student unions, there is a limit to how many times you can rerun. Most times it's usually 2 years. Some unions it's 3 years. It kind of depends. I don't really have that information, so I didn't really want to share it in case I did kind of give anything incorrect. But I suppose the most important thing is that student unions are made by students for the students. So this isn't the college, any staff members from the college coming in and setting this up, and I suppose kind of being in the background about it, is completely separate group. So it really is the best place for students to go to if you have problems and if you're facing difficulty with staff in colleges, because it does happen. Like everyone's going to have some sort of challenge that they'll face throughout their college career, that they might be up against a wall and the staff members or your lecturers could be saying no, no, no. So that's what your student union is there for. They're your representatives. They're the ones who are meant to voice your concerns when you're not being heard. And the good thing is the colleges and institutions do listen to the students' union. Now, sometimes it might take a little bit of a protest to get them to listen, but usually they do listen. So if you do ever find yourself really struggling with an issue and you're not really able to solve it yourself, go to the union. Like, there's no shame in going to the union at all, asking for help. That is the whole point that student unions exist. And they're able to help you, even if they might not have the right answer. They'll definitely, the people involved in the unions will give it their best to try and make sure that whatever it is you're struggling with, that you will get the proper supports for it. So I suppose the great thing about student unions is, probably from advocacy, is you can decide what your student representatives do through mandates. So this can be done through class rep meetings, student council, for us it's USI COGAL or National Council. Excuse me, there is a different structure, like I said, depending if you're in further education or higher education. So I kind of didn't get to, I suppose, cover everything in that aspect, but there is definitely systems in place that can make sure that if there's a certain issue that you want solved, you can bring that through whatever form that might be to your officers who will be able to deliver on this. So I suppose to kind of just give you a rough example of what a mandate kind of looks like. So this is a mandate that was passed in our Congress or COGAL back in 2018. So it's Universal Design for Learning. This is proposed by the University of Galway Students' Union. So I kind of just read through it. So Congress notes learning materials used in lectures, tutorials, and for study are frequently inaccessible to students with different requirements. Congress recognizes the Universal Design for Learning approach campaigns for more user-friendly, varied, and accessible materials for students who have physical/hidden disability, mental health conditions, student parents, and students whose first language is not English. Therefore, Congress mandates the Vice President for Equality and Citizenship and the Vice President for Academic Affairs to work with relevant organizations to support the implementation of Universal Design for Learning wherever possible. So that's kind of just a very rough outline of how a mandate can look. Like I said, it'll look very different depending on what institution you're in. I'm just basing this off what USI mandates look like. But this could be for anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be for disabilities. Like I said, there could be stuff for jam cards. There's stuff for LGBT. There's stuff for Gaeilge. There could be stuff regionally. It depends on a national level, but at a local level, you can make it a lot more specific. I'm kind of annoyed that I didn't actually put in a local level mandate because I definitely could have found one. But it'll kind of follow the same structure of you give a little bit of information. So under the Congress notes, just kind of give you information on what you're talking about in your mandate, recognizes what's been done so far, and then the mandate part itself. So that's kind of how it would roll out in that sense. So in terms of representation, the SEs are always looking for students to get involved. Particularly a lot of marginalized groups are encouraged to join to amplify their voices. So people who are queer, from an ethnic diverse background, if from the disability community, loads of people, everyone is welcome in the union. And that's the whole point about student unions. It's not just for a certain cohort of students, it's for absolutely everyone. And I think sometimes I've seen in the past that, you know, if you're not necessarily involved with going on nights out or something and you need to go to the union, but you see a load of people who always go out and do all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter. They're still there for you. Like, there was times last year when I was in TU Dublin, that a lot of students would come up to me, probably this time last year, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't know that your building was here, and I didn't know we could go into it." And I was like, yeah, like I told you this. I told you this at the start of the semester when I was giving orientation, that this is the whole point. Like, we are there to support, but we're also there for a chat. Like, people have come into me before, not even having casework, and they just want to have a chat or a vent about their day. If they're having a really bad day with assignments or a lecturer just annoyed them or something, that's fine. I mean, like we said, we were once students as well, so we completely understand where these are all coming from. So you're not going to, suppose, we're not going to turn you away at all if you come to our doors. But yeah, like I said, in terms of representation, the great thing is, like I said, through the mandates, you can be the change you want to see. So if you see that there's certain things in college or whatever your institution is, and things aren't going the way it should be, or you're kind of facing up against a wall, fight for it. Like, that's the whole point of the union. They're there to help fight and make sure that everyone gets good quality access to education, and making sure that no one is getting, I suppose, sorry, brain just stopped working. That's a dyslexia there. The whole point, like I said, is unions are there to help. And yeah, that's kind of me losing my point there. Sorry. Yeah, so I suppose I found a really nice picture over the weekend when I was kind of actually doing this, and it kind of fits quite nicely, I suppose, even for my remit as well. When we talk about equality, and particularly for inclusion of people. So equality is, I suppose, and it's a nice way how it's been done in different shoes. There's different ways, there's different graphics that I've seen before for this, but I thought this one was quite nice. So equality is getting a pair of shoes, is everyone getting a pair of shoes. Diversity is everyone wearing a different type of shoe. Equity is everyone getting a pair of shoes that fits them. Accessibility is having shoes or alternatives that feel comfortable. Inclusion is feeling respected and valued whether you are not wearing shoes or not. And belonging is showing up with or without shoes and without fear of judgment. And this is very much what student unions are about. Like, it's all of those 6 points that I've kind of just talked about there, that it is equal, it is diverse, it is equity. We do fight for equity, accessibility, inclusion, and belonging. These are very much the key core aspects of student unions. And like I said, once you actually get into it and start talking to people, you will really kind of get to see that in person and have that feeling. Like I said, it's not really something I can really put into words, unfortunately. It's just something, once you start doing it, you'll know exactly what I mean when you're in it. So I suppose I've actually breezed through this a little bit quicker than I expected. Really sorry. So I suppose my recommendations for everyone who's here: get involved. Like, there's literally no shame in getting involved. And if it's something that you've never done before, or you're scared out of your life to do it, why not? Like, you're only in this part of your life for a very short time. Like, you're only going to be in the education system for a certain amount of time, and then you're going to be moving on with your life. So why not get involved while you have the chance? And particularly once you're a student, you're a member of the student union itself in any way. So you'll be able to use all of the services and go to all these fun campaigns and events and protests and everything. So yeah, that's really kind of the big thing. It is, like I said, that's kind of in the picture here was our protest back in October, sorry. Jesus, feels like ages ago. But that was our big protest before the budget came out. We were lobbying about the cost of college. You can kind of see the big, massive, giant 65 billion euro coin there. And you can see the big USI banner. You see everyone there kind of obviously chanting angrily, but like, we're all having a lot of fun, taking to the streets and actually fighting for things that matter, or things that are really important for students. And like I said, another point that I put in here is you'll get to work on things that are very close to your heart. So not necessarily if, say for example, I'll take an example. When I was in TUD, there wasn't really a lot of mandates for queer students. So I started putting in a lot of mandates to the student union before I came into the officers, to basically support more LGBT initiatives and whatnot. And then it got passed, and then immediately they started doing work. So just because something might not necessarily be there doesn't mean that you can't put it in and suggest it to people. And I suppose that's the main thing. You can make an impact for future students. The whole point about student unions is progress. You're not necessarily going to get everything done in 1 year. It's nearly impossible to do everything in 1 year. There's certain things that I'm doing this year that I'm not able to do just because of the sheer amount of work it is. So it's on to my successor, who could take on more, and to their successor, and so on and so forth. It's all about building that progress bridge together and making sure that we all fight for things that are really important for us. Yeah, that's basically it. Oh, it won't let me go. Next slide. Next slide is, there we go. Yeah, thank you for listening. Like I said, I kind of underestimated how quick I'd really go through, but I tried my best to expand as best as I could. If you ever want to reach out to me, My email is down there at the bottom, equality@usi.ie. And yeah, that's basically it. I think I've kind of rambled enough as it is. I'm happy to take any questions if people would like any. And like I said, I know we have a lot of time on our hands, so please, if you have questions, I encourage them.
Thank you so much, James. That was amazing. Well done.
Thank you, James. That was inspiring. Even though I've already been in the union, it made me want to run again. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, or you can ask over camera as well. And I suppose if everyone is comfortable, maybe we could have another 10-15 minute break, and we'll have Adam and Kent coming on at 3.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions? That's okay if you don't. Don't worry about it. Cool. Well, why don't we take a lunch, or not a lunch break, a comfort break? Are you asking a question, Lorraine?
No, I was just going to say, actually, James, I'm laughing because me and Quiva are from the same alma mater. We both went to NCD, and I'm raging now. Listen to your talk, but I wasn't more proactive in the union and caused loads of trouble.
I could tell you a few stories, Lorraine.
But you know what? That was really interesting. It's great to hear all about that, because it's very important that students know that they can get support from the Students' Union. So it's really good to hear that. Actually, it was brilliant.
For sure. I see MSU have their hand raised if they'd like to go for a question.
Hello, we have a student here who came in slightly late, and they were asking if James would mind going back and just recapping his journey to get to the position of equality. And
Yeah.
citizenship.
Sure. Let me just
Thanks, James.
yeah, of course, no worries. Give me 1 second. Let me go back to the slide. Okay, here we go.
Your journey was very interesting, James, the way you said that you kind of went backwards.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I suppose kind of elaborate on it. I think I suppose it was fortunate that obviously I couldn't predict that COVID was going to happen, but I suppose I was fortunate in that sense that I got to be very involved in my first and second year, and then kind of third and fourth year I took a step back. But that was also because I did want to focus on my studies. That was a very difficult time during COVID. I'm sure a lot of people struggled over COVID. So yeah, I mean, I think I've seen people do. Actually, I don't know anyone else who's kind of done this way, the way I've kind of gone through student politics. But usually it is kind of, they'll go from class rep, might be school rep, or sometimes in different colleges, it might be called faculty reps. It depends on the system. Then you have part-time officers for certain positions, and then full-time sabbatical, and then possibly national level, if that was something you wanted to go into. But yeah, I've basically been involved in the student movement for nearly 6 years now, which is scary when I said that out loud. But yeah, no, it's definitely been a very wild journey. And even looking back now, if I was to have a talk with my 18-year-old self in first year, and I told him that you're going to be a national representative for equality and citizenship, I'd probably laugh and I'd be like, yeah, fat chance. It's kind of mad how once you do actually get into the union, it really does kind of drive you to do better and to do more and want to put yourself out there to make sure that all of these needs for students are being heard and being seen. Yeah, no, it's definitely been an interesting journey, and it's definitely something. It's definitely one of the highlights of I suppose my life for a fact. So
That's
yeah,
so
I'm
good
very
to hear.
what.
That's so good to hear, just that it's one of the highlights of your life. And I think I wanted to come in and just say, like, how you were emphasizing that once you're in the union, you realize how amazing it is. And I feel like it's so hard once you're in the union and you realize and know all of the supports and resources available. How to disseminate it all is such an overwhelming task, and like students can really take it or leave it with you, I think, which can be tough. But there's just so